Yes, so people, we are looking at The Swallow. This is the brand new film from Tadhg O'Sullivan, who wrote and directed it. You know, it is produced. Actually, we do not have produced by information, I don't think. Let me just. No, we do not have produced by inform. Oh, yes, sorry. It's also produced by Tadhg. He also edits the piece, right? Cinematography is from Fergal Ward and Tadhg as well. The artwork we see was from Bernadette Kiley, and the sound, right, mixing was Steve Flanagan. Okay, so the film stars Brenda Fricker as our unnamed woman, and a younger version of our unnamed woman is played by Sorcha Kenny. All right, the gist of the film, it is this, people. Okay, in a small house by the sea, a woman begins a letter to an unknown correspondent, surrounded by the books, mementoes, and clutter of her life. Her home exposed to the waves of a rising ocean, she writes about the history of lost art, considering what has been lost and wondering about her own desire to hold on. She meditates on memory and on art's aspiration to immortality. So, yeah, that's what we have here. It's a very interesting piece, right? Because, as said, we have this, right? This look at art and memory and everything, and you wonder, I wonder what our director was saying. And like sometimes we have the fortune of having, we do have, right, a director's statement, which is always handy, right? So Tadhg says this: The Swallow emerged from a series of questions that I had preoccupied me for some time. Questions about the preservation of art, about the politics of what art is preserved, about the very idea of preservation in an era when the future itself is uncertain. My idea in writing the film had been to find a character for whom such questions would be urgent. To make the questions acutely relevant, I imagined an older person. Towards the end of her life, I imagined an artist living by a sea whose rising tide mark was a daily reminder of the world's fate beyond her. I was more interested in the questions than in proposing any answers. Doubt and uncertainty seemed more human and more real. I brought this same openness to the making of the film itself. Drawing on my background in documentary, I sought to create a small world, place a character within it, and find my way around that world and into the life and mind of the character through patience and discovery. To make this work, I needed two things: a really brilliant actor and a remarkable location. The latter I found not far from my own home on the west coast of Ireland, an old house surrounded on three sides by the sea. The former I was lucky enough to find in one of Ireland's greatest actors, Brenda Fricker. Working with Brenda took the film to a different level. Here was someone who could bring a deeply personal understanding of solitude in later life, something which she described as a loneliness that refuses pity. This insight was key to our development of the character, both in terms of performance and the writing and realization of the voiceover script. We wanted to create a unique portrait of a unique character, of a kind rarely represented on screen. Such creative input was also key to filming, which took place across 3 winter weeks. Working with a loose shooting script and a small crew, we were able to adapt and improvise in response to the ever-changing environment, capturing the rapid shifts in light and the water in the remarkable tidal landscape of North Coquerel, working in a style I had previously used on feature documentaries, The Great Wall in 2015 and To the Moon in 2020, which both used literary texts as voiceover. The picture edit was largely completed before any of the narration was recorded. In this way, a cohesive, if mysterious, cinematic portrait emerged, which did not rely on the narration to work. The voiceover, when added, would illuminate rather than explain the inner thoughts, shining a small but penetrating light into the small world of this singular character. So yeah, that is what Tadhg was trying to do, which is interesting, right? Because you wonder about these things. And I think we have our character pondering, right? She's writing a letter. And I think one of the things I wondered with this, because at no point do we ever have her name who she's writing the letter to, right? And I don't believe we even get the sex of the person, you know? And so I'm thinking, right, it could be you're writing a letter to, someone far away, right? Or is this her writing in a cathartic kind of way, right? She's putting down thoughts, things in the head that she wished she had said to a dead love. You know what I mean? Because the way I feel she is writing and talking, it could be Diva, right? Because some of the words used could be, I think, perceived as someone passing away, as well as someone leaving, right? Like, oh, you said it was better to leave by land rather than sea. And leave by land could be the body, you know what I mean, exhuming into the earth, right? The body fertilizing the earth. You know what I mean? So, like, you are, I don't know, I was pondering all of these different kind of things, and it's this talk about art, right? And art that's lost, the preservation of art. There's one point she's, imagine a library that contained all lost, masterpieces, unfinished masterpieces, right? But that in itself, is it a masterpiece if it's not finished, right? Because we don't know what the finished thing could actually be, because there's things that start off and you're like, oh, this is, and then it's finished and you're like, it didn't finish well, right? There's plenty of books, poems, films, TV series that do that. So at the beginning, you think, oh, this is going to be great. And then it's not. And I imagine the same with, paintings, drawings, right? I've definitely seen like comic book work, and you see the pencils, and the pencil work is fantastic. But once it's been colored, kind of loses something, right? Or vice versa, right? You've seen the pencils and you're just like, oh, it's kind of basic. And then it's get inked and colored and you're like, geez, this is incredible. You know what I mean? So I think what you say is a masterpiece is, I think very subjective. You know what I mean? And so that in itself is interesting, right? We have our, woman, she's looking at pictures, right? She's looking at these things because there's a resonance of memory in everything, which is, I think it's a fascinating thing. And it's a thing that I think everyone can relate to, right? Where if you've shared a space with someone for a period of time, when that person is gone, in whatever context, there is echoes of them everywhere, right? In the simplest of things, right? You might see it in, a mark on the wall, right? You might see it in, a painting that maybe you got together or you've talked about in the past, right? In the carpet, in a sofa, in every single thing, there is this resonance, this echo, this shadow. And I mean, that's a thing that this, woman kind of refers to oftentimes, right? We have her in the house. We also see her out in the wild, with a dog collecting things, and, right, she's thinking about stuff, right? We have shots, and I mean, two of the places I could figure, right? I feel there was some video of Rome and then some video of Egypt. I wasn't sure on the last spot, right? It might be still in either of those countries, but it might be somewhere else. I wasn't quite sure, but, it's just, I think, travel, right? Again, when you're walking, you think about time spent with someone and time, maybe they've told you about, right? So it's just all of these things come up, and again, if you've walked with that person in those things, you've had these conversations. So obviously, yes, you could think of those things when you take that same walk, right? You step in those same steps. You know what I mean? The DNA is in the footprints, people, right? So it is a fascinating piece, right? And it's just when you think about the words used and all of this stuff, right? Tadhg has really crafted something unique, something that just makes you think about so many different things. You know what I mean? So many different things are here. And like, there's this bit where she's looking in the mirror, our mysterious lady. And then we see a younger version of her in a mirror, right? Because, again, you know what I mean? It's these echoes of, right? So, she has done this before, right? being in this spot, looking in a mirror, and we get that, right? There's a bit where we have her walking, and then it kind of morphs into again the younger version of her, because it, like, I think she talks about when she's painting, right? It's not for her. It is trying to capture a moment forever, right? And within that, you have immortality, right? So just all of these things are here throughout this piece. It's the poetry of words as they are intertwined with all the different things we are viewing, these sometimes landscapes and shots. I mean, it is definitely, I think, an enticement for Ireland itself in a way too, because you know what I mean. I think if you're a person that loves walking in, the nature of things, right? You see these vistas and you just think, oh man, imagine visiting that place, right? Walking by the sea, walking across fields, just, the ruins and everything. And yeah, it invokes a lot. And we also get this, I think it's like this children's tale, right? About a swallow and a prince, which is kind of fascinating in itself, right? The parts that Tadhg decided to use, right? So, yeah, I mean, it's just over an hour. So it's not necessarily a long piece, but I think it's the perfect length. It doesn't overstay its welcome, which sometimes these things could do, right? So it does feel like it's the perfect length, and it also is something that I think it stays with you, because there are these themes, these topics, this, thread of life and death and memory that sit within the swallow. So when it finishes, you are still ruminating over these things, because it will make you think about, again, like maybe the people in your life who have gone, whether they have just left or whether they have passed, you know what I mean? It just invokes all of this stuff, which I think when you can create something that does those things, there is something to that. There is definitely something to that. And hey, it's not really a surprise that this piece has been chosen to close the Dublin International Film Festival. Because it's a piece that kind of speaks to Ireland, but it also speaks to all of these other themes. So, yeah, if you get the opportunity to immerse yourself in the swallow, people, I definitely recommend you do that. If these kind of things are, what interest you, because it is not an action film. It is not a film full of, crazy story and twists and turns and all of that. But it is a piece that makes you ponder life and everything that makes it up. So yeah, people, if you can, definitely check out The Swallow.